Hello, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay there. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maxine from WriteUpp, and I'm delighted to have you with us on today's session on AI and healthcare. Today's webinar is hosted by WriteUpp and Yung Sidekick. For those who don't know us, WriteUpp is a practice management software for healthcare professionals which helps you manage scheduling, billing, notes, and much more, all in one secure, easy to use system. WriteUp can be used together with Yung Sidekick, which is an AI-powered clinical documentation tool designed specifically for therapists and mental health professionals. It allows you to instantly generate structured clinical notes, treatment plans, and reports while staying fully GDPR and HIPAA compliant. I'm just going to launch a quick poll to see who's joining us. Perfect. Yeah, so if you can let us know who you all are, that would be nice to see. And I'm going to go back. So today we'll explore how healthcare professionals are using AI right now and how you can start applying it in your own work. We'll focus on real world examples where AI is improving practice management, documentation, and clinician well-being. We'll also be having a Q&A session, so please do send your answers over. We'll be joined by two excellent speakers who bring deep expertise and hands-on experience. This is David Cooper, clinical psychologist and digital health strategist. And Steve Wilden, registered psychotherapist and AI adoption leader at Bayridge Counselling Group in Canada. We also have some offers for you for any new subscribers. If you register in the next 2 hours with both WriteUpp or Yung Sidekick, we'll be offering a free month. Okay, amazing. So I guess we'll just jump right in and get started. So, Dave, to get started, can you tell us what's changed in the last 12 months that makes AI useful in day-to-day practice, not just R&D?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So excited to talk to everybody today, and especially excited to hear what Steve's got coming up for you later. He's got a lot of good practical tips. And I think you put it great, Maxine. Like the what's changed in the last 12 months has really been just incredible, right? We know AI is rolling out faster than any other technology in history in terms of adoption and the number of people using it. And I think we've seen that a lot in just the capabilities of the tools. You know, I've been looking at this stuff since it first came onto the market a couple of years ago and just seeing the proliferation of use cases. So I think what we're seeing over the last 12 months is not only this explosion of use cases using AI for note taking, referrals, practice management, all these different direct clinical applications. And then we've seen companies like WriteUpp and Yung come together to really bring those together into capabilities that I think for clinicians and people practicing really helps us, adapt to these new tools. And let's be honest, my favorite AI use case for clinician is automating all the boring crap that we don't like doing. I mean, hands up everybody who got into this to not help patients and do paperwork and, you know, dabble on social media. No, like that's not what we're here for. And that's I think the real promise of AI is really what's going to help us going forward.
Amazing, thank you. And what are the top 3 behavioural health workflows where AI is already helping?
So I'm going to give you a sneak preview of what Steve's going to be talking about, but note taking. I've seen it used in like referrals, closing out case files, um, tracking changes with patients over time. I think some of the great use cases we'll talk about today are the great uses cases for Young, or, I've been on vacation and I'm coming back and okay, I'm catching up with all my patients. Where were we? What did we leave off on? Um, AI note taking is great for audit time or when you need to go back into your patient notes and try to remember when you talked about something or whether or not, we talked about suicide and did a risk assessment. And not just that, I think we're starting to see it into interesting areas like, you know, being sort of a co-pilot or somebody you can turn to talk to. Lots of therapists and clinicians practice one-on-one or in areas where they really can't get really good supervision. And I think there's folks trying to address that. But as a stopgap measure, saying like, hey, am I thinking about this right? Is there something I missed while maintaining, patient privacy can actually be a pretty decent use case these days.
Amazing, thank you. Oh, apologies. Okay, next question I have for you is, what are the biggest
Yeah.
myths and fears you hear from clinicians, and what would you say is true and what isn't?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest one is that, you're going to get replaced by AI. And that AI is coming to take your job. I don't think that is as present a fear as losing out on the technological opportunities for the profession that AI represents. And what I mean by that is when I talk with clinicians, when I talk with therapists, a lot of them are just, I don't even want to start using AI. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to use this. I don't know how it's relevant in my practice. And that worries me a lot more because that means as a profession, we don't know how these tools are used. We don't have a good understanding of how they're applied. And so kind of like what happened with a lot of the EHR rollout in the, early 2000s, we get dictated to rather than having a seat at the table about how these things get deployed and get used. And we can't push back in effective ways to be able to separate the hype from, the reality when it comes to using these tools. So my hope is as things like Young get integrated into WriteUp and tools like WriteUp become more, available, that we can see, okay, I can see how this tool works. I know the questions to ask. I know how this works in my practice, and I know how to talk to my patients about it. Um, so I think that is probably the more reality of the situation is that AI, for all the hype, is probably more likely going to become just one more tool, piece of technology that we have to deal with as clinicians and therapists, right? None of us went to graduate school to learn how to do a website or marketing or run our own businesses, right? But that's all part of it, right? That's all part of what we do in the practice of modern day, you know, therapy. And so I think AI is just going to become another part of that. So understanding how these tools get used and fitting them into your practice and workflow, I think, is really what I think will help bust a lot of those myths and fears.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about this idea of assistive
Yeah,
AI. How should clinicians think about the balance between decision support and decision making, and how do we make sure the clinician always stays in the loop?
absolutely. And again, I think that comes down to the kinds of tools you use and the use case you use them for. When I talk with psychologists and graduate students, I remind them like, hey, it's your license on the line when you're using these tools. So you need to be informed and ask questions about vendors, about use cases and security, and all the important things that we'll touch on today. Um, so where you are in the driver's seat and should be. Um, but there is a lot of cases. I think you brought up like decision support, right? Like that is a case where again, it can help you think about things that you weren't necessarily tracking. I mean, I was playing around with AI and threw in an old graduate school case conceptualization and was like, tell me what I might have missed about this patient. It really brought up some interesting things that I hadn't considered and different modalities that I wasn't necessarily trained in, but might be helpful for the patient to suggest. Another good use case comes to mind from my own training where I had a patient come in who was saying, they were feeling he'd been diagnosed ADHD and bipolar, and just something was off, and the symptoms weren't hanging together for me. So when I got her medical history, I was a graduate student. I had plenty of time, so I was able to kind of comb through the medical history, pull out the medications she was taking, go to drugs.com, figure out all the drug interactions, and come back and say, like, hey, I think this is why you're feeling this way. Let's get you off some of these meds. That's something AI can do now before the intakes even started, right? You can parse those long medical records. We're getting to that situation. So again, it's going to help you be a better clinician, help you make better decisions for your patients. But like you said, it's ultimately you in the decision making seat, and you should stay in control, right? Like you using the tool rather than the tool using you.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Um, Finally, when clinicians are exploring new AI tools,
Yeah.
what's a simple mental framework they can use to evaluate them, especially around accuracy, auditability, security, and time saved?
Yeah, I think there's a simple kind of acronym I think I've been toying around with that might be useful in this case, right? Think care, right? We're all clinical care. C, clinical fit. Does this actually support clinical care, or is it complicating it? Are we doing it just to do it, or does it actually save me time in note taking, documentation, follow up? Is it reducing friction instead of adding to it? So that's C. A, accountability and consent, right? Who's responsible? What do patients need to know? Um, who made this tool? How is it used? How was the data sourced? How are patients being informed about its use? Like we said, does the AI make decisions, or does it have a human in the loop? R would be risk and regulation, right? Is it HIPAA compliant, or HIPAA in Canada, right? Does it store process data? How is that all collected? And understanding that, just like any EHR tool or any other tool you use clinically, is important, right? Are there known risks or biases for different groups? And then E, evidence and evaluation, right? Like, if you're using it in a clinical context, does it have evidence that it works? Or is there transparency about where the data is coming from and what the limitations are? How is this? Are there escalation paths, right? Like you could even see that with like an AI scheduling tool. If it goes wrong, what happens, right? And being able to ask those questions from anybody you're working with is really important.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, that is excellent, David. So we're going to move on now to Steve, who is going to show us how a 60 clinician Canadian practice improve documentation, quality, timeliness, onboarding, supervision, and reporting. So yeah, over to you, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. As noted, my name is Steve Wilding. I work with Bayridge Counselling Centers out of Ontario, Canada. I was assisting in a large part of the AI rollout with Yung Sidekick within our practice. We have in and about 60 plus therapists. That number is kind of always shifting both directions. But we have quite a wide variety of programs. We've got group programs, individual therapy. We work with psychiatrists, psychologists, psychometrics, everything across the board. And prior to an AI rollout, we were just using a standard EHR, doing all of our note taking online, some preset templates for us to type everything in. But with most EHRs, things can be time consuming or slow if your internet isn't fast enough, or if it's down for the day and you got to do it on paper and write it up later. So honestly, I started looking for a solution for two reasons. One, I'm not a fan of paperwork, and I was trying to find a way to alleviate my day. And the second was also just the fact that I really didn't like the disconnect of having a medium between me and a client that I was seeing in the room. So I really wanted a method to be able to alleviate having to remember an entire session length. And through our research and time, stumbled across Yung AI or Yung Sidekick. So some of the big problems we prioritized first before we get into demos here. One is we wanted to make sure for accuracy, and we also wanted to ensure that data management was obviously held to a certain high standard. Everything fit within our regulating colleges, our CRPO, CPO, all of that, as well as any PIPEDA and HIPAA requirements, so legal requirements for electronic data. And so in our approach here, one of the biggest things that we wanted to do first is test it. So we gave ourselves plenty of time to test, to play around, to basically try and break it and see what would happen. And so once we felt very comfortable with that, we basically just presented it to our entire organization and started training individuals either one-on-one or in small groups until they felt comfortable, providing them many opportunities to answer any questions that they might have, as well as any guidelines and policies that both we as a company have or that we may have found through HIPAA or PIPEDA. One of the biggest things out of the door in using Yung Sidekick that I noticed in my early trials was the mental load reduction. Sweet mercy, that was the best thing in the world. Now I can sit and I can go through an entire day not having to worry if I have every single fine little detail from that session memorized. If I happen to have quick back-to-back sessions, I'm not worried about trying to jot down very fast and not getting rest time in between. I can go through my day knowing that what I need is there and ready to go when I'm done. So throwing this all in with things like automated billing, I mean, here I am doing an 8-hour workday with 15 minutes of paperwork at the end of my day. Substantial drop from what could have been an hour or more. Right? So it has been phenomenal. And then throw on top of that consistency in notes. Coming from a larger practice, especially for referrals, I see this all the time. We all take notes in different ways. Some are shorthanded, some got keywords, some really like big narrative style stories. So when you get that referral coming in, sometimes you're like, well, do I want to read all of that? And then the other side is, do I even understand all of that? Because your style is different. And so implementing this across the board has allowed us to have consistency in our notes, not just between individual therapist sessions, but across the board as an organization. This has also allowed us to be more present and have our intake questionnaires, for example, that we have in our first sessions, be much more fluid and conversational and actually connect with the client rather than just having them answer a bunch of questions that we're asking. So it has been great. Burnout, that's a big one. I have 2 really young kids at home. I've got a few days that I work from home. And so there was always that struggle at the end of the day where, hey, I've done 5, 6, 8 sessions or more. I just want to go play with my kids. But no, I had to do an extra hour and a half of paperwork. But now if I have to step away, I have that safety and knowledge that what I need is ready and easily accessible. And so with that, I kind of wanted to share my screen here and kind of give you a little walkthrough of what my day kind of looks like using Yung Sidekick. So this is our Yung Sidekick interface. Very straightforward. All of the sessions that I have with the client just sitting right in front of me. Yung also does a great job of giving some automated titles so that you can quickly and see what the content of that session might have been. Now, above and beyond just simple note-taking, Yung Sidekick offers an amazing amount of additional tools that helps throughout my day. And so even before I start going into taking my notes or meeting with a client, I might walk into something here like prep highlights. This tool has been great. It is a summary of my most recent session that I had with that client, as well as a summary of a few of the past previous ones to kind of give me that catch up. You know, Dave mentioned it, we come back from holidays, from vacations, or just time away, and we're like, well, where were we? Do I want to go read through 3, 4, 5, 6 notes over the course of 20 minutes to catch up? Here it is sitting all in front of me, the client's requests, our action plans, a summary, etc. I work a lot with kids and teens, and so summertime, there's usually substantial gaps in where we are. This helps great for reviewing the last session, but then we can also walk into our client profile and we can get an entire narrative overview of the time that we have spent together. We get a little psych profile, we got a little client story. And then Dave also mentioned in his past experiences, hey, some of these symptoms aren't quite lining up, and you know, I can comb through everything and try and figure it out. And Yung provides this great little tool of potential ICD-10 diagnosis. Now, one of the things that I really thoroughly love about this approach is that it provides me with its justification. You know, Dave mentioned we want to be in the driver's seat. So we're not just sitting here and it's spewing out a random diagnosis and we just say like, well, but why? It's going to tell us why. It's going to give us justification for its reasoning. So once I go through that, I might also come over here and just double check the treatment plan that, again, Yung automatically updates, that automatically gets created for you. And this can be regenerated on our user input. So as we all know, being practitioners, you start a session and then 3-4 sessions in, you take a hard left turn and you're not even talking about necessarily what they came in for anymore. So we can regenerate that treatment plan to get new assistance, new ideas, new directions. Now, a big thing here is assistive AI and being in the driver's seat. And so I really want to stress that this is not the map and we are following it. This is there to challenge our clinical judgment, to maybe provide some ideas and some assistive directions in areas that we may not have thought about or considering new possibilities. But ultimately, we read through this, we make that decision, and we roll forward with it. Now, once we're actually ready to go and my client's coming in the door, first things first is checking consent. So this is one of the big ways that we try and remind ourselves and our clients that we're in the driver's seat. So we provide an AI consent form to all of our clients who come in the door, and we verbally talk through that with them in great detail. We ask for an opportunity to answer any questions they might have. And if they sign off with it and they are okay, then we can simply pop into here and I can record a session and away we go. One thing to clarify in here is, even though it might say record session, this does not store any audio. When you are done, it is done. So much so that if you were to hit refresh, I might get a little pop-up warning if it's already started recording that, hey, if you leave this, it's not going to be stored. Be sure. All right. Now, one of the other things is, what do you do if somebody doesn't actually want to come in and provide consent? Now, you will have to check with your local jurisdictions, but here in Canada, that's okay. If they don't want to consent, we don't run it live during our session, and yet we can still walk in to dictate recap after they're done. And this works like the old school media ways. You know, you see your doctor, you got the little tape recorder, verbally putting your notes down and handing it off to a transcriptionist. Well, Yung in this case is our automatic transcriptionist. We can then control all of the input information that we want. We can put as much detail or as little detail as we want in there, and away we go. Now, as we are rolling this out, and for, I'm sure, many people who think about using AI, the question comes, well, but I already have my own system and I'm pretty efficient at it. I can sit there and I can do my notes without even really looking at my computer. Well, to that, I give a few different considerations. The first is, yeah, you might be really good at typing your notes on your computer. What does your client think you're typing? Does that in any way, shape, or form actually take away from your time spent with them, from being connected, from hearing them, from being a safe place? The second in here is that going through, putting our dictation starts to give us all of those additional tools that I've already started covering here, our prep highlights, our client story, our treatment plans. There's some unofficial diagnoses and some visualizations as well of where we're going in our session time. As one really good example of this, we have progress tracking, a really great visual overview of the last bunch of sessions. You can even at any point in here go through and these start to give you some updates of those sessions. If you want to get even more specific, because I love having justifications, you can feel free to hover over it and it's going to give you quotes and specific details from that session of why that value exists. All kinds of great tools to help enhance our day-to-day functionality. So that is the second reason, is that you get access to all these additional tools. And the third is consistency. The notes always come out polished. They come out to the way that you want them to be. And that leads into the last one, is the amount of control that we have. We have custom note templates in here. You can set it up to put in or exclude whatever you want it to be. And at the end of the day, our session's done, we've recorded it, and our notes automatically get generated here. You can add as many additional reports as you want, as many custom templates as you want. If you want to go in and, hey, there's something here that I really don't want to be in my final note, that's okay. We have full editing capabilities. We can come in, we can remove, we can add, we can change whatever we want to have. And then once we're all done, okay, well, how does this actually end up in my notes? Well, very, very simple. There's a copy button. We copy. We go to our EHR, in this case, lovely WriteUpp. Pop over to our client, create a note, paste. Done. All set for the day. Go home. It's as simple as that. This has made so much of a difference in our day-to-day practice. I can't stress enough how much less stress I have now. When we walk into the idea of programming custom templates as well, you can go in, you can add as many or as few as you want. And one of the nice parts about going into anything here is that it is not just additive, it is restrictive. It is also very simple to program. Dave mentioned again, we didn't go into school to learn about business, running businesses, or making websites. And so why should we have to learn how to code to make our note templates? Well, Yung gives us a really straightforward example here. We use natural language input. You just type in exactly what you want it to do, as if you were discussing with a fellow clinician or with a supervisee, or explaining to your supervisor why we're doing this. And it will take that and create your note. You can set formatting styles. You can say, hey, make this bullet points, make this a list. Use only 4 words. No matter what control you want, you have it. You can include your exact modalities, your focus points, and that will help refine the note into more of your style as well. But more than anything, it is consistent. It does anonymize personal information as well. So any names, locations, they automatically get removed here. Okay. And again, for anyone within our Canadian and Ontario practice in particular, there are also way more additional tools to ease that time. So I'm, a pretty broad and generic psychotherapist, but I know many therapists who work with WSIB, which is our workplace and safeties. And anyone here who has ever worked with WSIB knows that you have those reports that can take sometimes hours to complete. Well, over here, we pop into our other reports, and there is an automatic WSIB generation there as well. You simply choose the sessions you want to be included in that report, select generate, and it pops it all out for you. If you have a supervisor that requires note-taking, you can pop into here and you get 2 choices. You get a summary of summary for supervision, either snapshot or extended, nice and short, or you can pop in and go nice and long, although I have not generated one for the extended. I like my stuff to be to the point. So all of these tools day to day, these are things that go far, far beyond simply taking a note for your session. These are all built to be assistive AIs for us to help us with our jobs. And one of the big things when I was rolling this out and training and helping our clinicians get on board with this was, okay, well, what if it's wrong? That's good. It challenges your clinical judgment if you don't agree with it. I will say I have had very few complaints, if any, errors come up. But if I don't agree with something, that is just as helpful. Having a little mini supervisor sitting beside me, really getting me to think, that's just as helpful as any other tool we have. Outside of that, it's a simple matter of going through and reviewing your notes, making sure they're accurate. That's one of the standards and policies and guidelines we have within our clinic, is every note does get reviewed by a human. There's no blanket copy and paste. So it is a couple extra minutes just to ensure accuracy. But again, the more and more we've been using this, the more and more we see that it has been incredibly accurate and incredibly helpful. As a kind of a closing summary on this exact tool here, is kind of the typical resistances that I saw in training and rolling this out in a larger practice. And the first was safety and security and data management. For that one, we'll be handing it off to Alex from Yung Sidekick in a minute. The second there was one about, hey, this is different from how I've always done things. And to that, I really challenged our clinicians is try it. At the end of the day, if you're ended up taking notes and you're curious about this and how it works, is this just runs in the background. You can just hit record or do your dictate, and you can still do everything exactly the way you do it, to compare against, to try it. When I was honestly starting these for a solid month, I did both, just to ensure that everything was actually meeting our standards and requirements. And then at the end of the day, well, we check in, we offer open doors for all of our clinicians for any questions they have about legality or HIPAA, PIPEDA, guidelines. We stay in contact and review of places like CRPO and see if there's any guideline changes there. But for the most part, it has been well received, well accepted, and very, very much used across the board. For that, I believe it comes to the end of my little demo here, and I think I want to hand that back to Maxine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was so helpful. Yeah, amazing. So we're going to move on now we're going to have a quick panel on governance and privacy with Dave, Alex, who is the founder of Young Sidekick, and also Steve again. So yeah, let's start off with Alex. If you can talk a little bit about the data flow, where is data processed and stored, and how is PHI handled? What's the retention policy? If you can just explain a little bit more on that for us, please, Alex.
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Maxine. Yeah, I mean, as a founder, I talked to probably hundreds of clinicians personally over the past couple of years, and privacy, data security, HIPAA, BHIPAA, PIPEDA, GDPR UK was probably, they were probably the most frequently asked questions. And a lot of hesitation and concern come from, well, what are you doing with my data? What happens to my patients? And it's pretty simple. So all the sessions that you that you log in with Yung Sidekick, they are completely anonymized, right? So when you start with us, you can, like Steve just showed, you can select an option that will derive all the PHI from your sessions, right? So you don't have this second, you don't have to use real patient names, right? So with this, that turns Yung Sidekick into a completely anonymous tool. Our core infrastructure runs in the secure US data servers, but with, of course, encrypted storages, and of course we use industry-grade infrastructure to process and store the data. But nothing leaves the US. We use nothing leaves the US, and we use the we use the protocols, the transfer protocols that are currently in place between the UK and the US that allows us to store and process the sessions in the US. Right. So what else? When you start with us, we sign BAAs with every user that starts with us. We also have BAAs in place, business associate agreement in place with all third-party tech providers, right? And we also have zero storage policy. That means that even if you choose to record, even though it's not necessary, you can do session recaps. But if you choose to record with us, we never store audio recordings. So once the session is processed, we immediately delete all the recordings from our servers, right? And since we have zero storage policy agreements signed with other third-party tech providers, that means that they do that as well. Another thing that I guess is relevant, especially to those who are in the US and in Canada, that we are under the HIPAA, we are not a data controller, but rather a data processor. So that means that we cannot be subpoenaed, and the clinician, you as a clinician, are in full control of your data. That means that at any point, you can delete all your sessions, all the patient information that you've logged in, and it will be completely gone from the system, right? Yeah, we have, I mean, if you choose to do that, we do not store any backups, and if it's gone, then it's gone. All right. So again, just one-on-one. All data is processed and stored in the US. Everything is encrypted, both in transit and at rest. All the access to the information is role-based, fully audited, and region isolated. So we've built a pretty advanced system of layered prompts that consistently double checks each other, so that, well, essentially the model validates its own output before you see it, and that keeps node accuracy up to 95%. But that said, Yung is always, like Steve and David mentioned, is always human in the loop. So you as a clinician is the final author and the reviewer of every node. So once you've made sure that the notes that were generated from your session is accurate, you can be 100% sure that it's safe, that it's safe with us, and it's not being used to train any AI models, or that it's never been sold to any, I don't know, third-party vendors. So it stays only in the system unless you want to delete it. So I hope I covered it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. If we could go back to yourself, David, if you could talk a bit about in day-to-day practice, what does AI safety actually mean for a clinician?
Yeah. So I think it starts with exactly all the stuff Alex just mentioned. Like, you want a vendor who is that level of transparent, right? Those are the questions you should be asking. You ask Alex even more questions. I'm sure he'll hate me for saying this, but yes, he will answer even more questions on security. You want, because again, it is your license. You are the ultimate arbiter, whether it's the note, whether it's the security of your patient. I mean, again, that is the way things work, is that we're the ultimate arbiter of all these things. So again, realistically look at your tools, go back to that workflow of, is this actually helping me? Is it saving time? Is it doing these things? That's what I love about this 1 month trial, right? Test it, see if it works, see if it actually saves you time, see if you can fit it into your workflow or not, see if it's for you, right? That's the first thing to do and to think about. And then the second is, yeah, ask all those security questions. I know we're working on a list of all those things for folks here in the US. I'm sure they're working on it in Canada as well, but keep your eyes out open for that, because we all are trying to do a better job of helping clinicians stay informed about all of this tech stuff. Because again, none of us went to school for any of this stuff. Prompt engineering and HIPAA compliance and security data audits, and ugh, it's gross, but it's just part of doing business now.
That's great, thank you. And back to Steve, if you could talk about what were staff's initial privacy safety concerns and how did you address them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like any big question when you have an AI program running is, okay, this thing is listening while we're talking. We're in, some of the most confidential moments of people's existence, and sometimes really hard stuff comes up. How do we ensure that that is actually good for clinicians and for clients? And so the first was actually just informing and learning ourselves just about how Young handles data. So that was a big one. We spent a good amount of time presenting our questions to Alex, who did a fabulous job of answering and putting everything to rest. We ensured, because we're a larger clinic, that we did meet all of the HIPAA and PIPEDA requirements, which we did. And so in terms of just actual safety, it came down to how clinician and client felt in the room. And so with that, it was really imperative that we drove home the idea that there is no storing of information, that there is anonymization across the board. And then more than anything else as well is the recognition that a client doesn't actually have to have it used, at least not live. So we still would use dictate recap, but it always came down to the human involvement and the human choice. And I think that was a big one to really drive home was, hey, we, the human side, has control over this. Not just the running, we have control over the templates, we have control over the editing, we have control over what finally gets saved. We are still the control. This is not a replacement. And so that safety and privacy concerns basically left it up to the choice. And that helped ease a lot of it. And many clinicians and many clients as well have been very open to the use of that. And yeah, it's been great.
Interesting. And when do you not use AI? How does your review or approval step work?
Yeah. So when we don't use it, the first is if the client simply just doesn't consent. And even in that case, as mentioned, we can still use the dictate recap. So that's a big one as well. And the second one might be, there may be occasional circumstances in a session where there is a just substantially large circumstance where we might hit pause, which is also a feature built directly into Young. I've used it a couple times here and there of someone has explicitly asked, hey, can we not? And I'll hit the pause button until we work through whatever they've gone through and it gets omitted. And then if they would like, or if we're past it, we can resume.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we have some really great questions coming in, which I think we can get started with, and you guys can answer. So let's take a look. Okay, we have a question here. I think probably Steve, this one is for yourself, but Dave, please feel free to jump in as well. Realistically, how many hours it saves per week?
I average somewhere from 25 to 35 clients in a week, and I would probably say I'm saving anywhere from 3 to 5 on average. That being said, I also have reports. I work with kids and teens, so I have parents. I have all kinds of additional things, supervision notes that need to get provided to my supervisor. So notes alone, 3 to 5. Total admin paperwork, probably more like 5 to 8.
Interesting.
I was also going to ask Steve, like, what about like reporting and when you get audited and things like that, right? It's not just saving time.
Yeah,
Like you said,
it's
during
the
the week,
larger
it's,
spectrum. And then
yeah,
like
it's all those
as I
things.
mentioned, I don't do WSIB, but for any of the WSIB clinicians that we have, they are saving every six, like some of them are saying it will take them 3 to 5 hours to write that report, depending on how much content goes in. That's a one-click button for them. So on
Yeah.
one client report alone, they're saving multiple hours. That's huge.
And not only that, but anecdotally, I've heard from a lot of therapists, you get better therapeutic relationship, right? Because you're not there focused on writing notes. You can like patients report that you feel more present, you feel more in the zone because you're not trying to also remember, okay, what do I need to remember from this session? I'm going to write my notes later, and it's one less thing for you to think about during the session.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have another question coming in, which is someone saying they do a lot of couples therapy, and how the tool supports that when you're working with couples.
I guess I can answer that one.
Sorry, Steve, I should have said.
That's it's all good. So when you actually input a new client in particular, there is actually a choice to choose between individual and couples. And when you choose couples, you also get to uniquely identify each of them. So you can give them their first name or unique client identifier. And so within that, Yung will actually differentiate who is who as that note gets provided and taken. As terms of the actual note that's outputted, I mean, you can use the standard defaults that are there, but you can also create, as noted, custom note templates. So it handles it fabulously is the simple answer.
Perfect.
Does it also do it with teens and parents, like kids and parents and stuff like
Yep.
that too?
Yep.
Awesome.
So I've definitely had it where they'll come in and we're sitting there and I've got, sitting with them, a parent and a kid, and it differentiates out even into the intake note, which is where I usually see them multiple times. It'll differentiate, hey, this is parent reported and this is actually what the child said.
Is there any like upward limit? Like, could you do like a family or anything? Have you found anything like that?
I haven't personally, but that would be a question, I think, for Alex.
Dave, I'll ask you to repeat the last one.
So, how many people could it support? Could you do like a group session?
Okay,
with this,
yeah.
or could you do, like, a
That's a
session?
good question. Well, it works perfectly with couples. However,
Okay.
it can
We're learning.
support up to 4 people. After that, it kind of starts to wander off, but that's going to be solved pretty soon. Again, we are kind of dependent, let's say technology providers on that. And hopefully AI models, they do evolve pretty quickly. And I'm pretty sure that by the end of this year, we'll be handling group sessions confidently.
Thank you, Alex. A couple of questions coming in on supervision. Someone's asked, what's the actual ROI here for a 20 clinician practice? Does it work for supervision? And someone else, do you use it for supervision too? So perhaps Steve or this would be best for yourself as well.
From the supervisor perspective, no. So it's not running during a supervision circle. But as kind of shared in there, there are supervision notes. So like my personal supervisor requires a monthly summary of all the clients that we have underneath her. And so if anyone has like supervised practice, you know what that is. And so that's really really a substantial time saver in being able to just output everything that she needs to be my supervisor and just hand it off to her. And so that's where I use it for supervision.
Thank you. And some questions, Alex, for yourself on where data is stored. So one in particular is UK data, but if you could answer that in a more broader sense as well.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, so we live in a lucky world where we can we can use the US servers, and that works perfectly for the UK and for the Canadian clinicians, just because between between the UK and the US, there's something that is called a data privacy framework that basically allows UK clinicians, that allows companies healthcare companies like us, located in the US, to process and store patient data from the UK in the US soil, respectively, and the same goes to the Canada. So there are plenty of trans-border agreements that allow data transfer and makes it legal to store it in one place. However, in some cases where we need to make it specific, we can do that for customers if they ask to.
Thank you so much. And we have a question from a user who works in client homes. They're asking, can they use it outside of a clinic room?
I'll take that one, I guess.
No,
The simple answer is
it's probably
yes.
best for you.
So it runs on any web-based device, so anything that has a browser. So at home, I have dual screen set up here. It's running over here while I'm sitting with my client here. In my office, it's on my phone. Hit record, done. And it's all accessible from anywhere else, so I'll do that there. And then, I don't like copy and pasting notes from my phone, so I come home and sit down on my computer and get it done. I also have a tablet. So all of these accessible, usable, all recording, all doing their job.
Interesting, thank you. And an interesting question here, could be for Steve again, or Dave, please jump in, but has anybody had to go to court with notes written from AI?
Not yet.
I know I haven't. I haven't heard anyone yet doing it, but again, this is why human in the loop is so important. Alex touched on a lot of the legality providers that they have with data, which is why it's important to ask those questions of data providers. And three, I'll say, even if you're a skeptic, right? Even if you're coming away from this of saying, hey, I'm a skeptic about AI, there is a lot of debate on the medical community side of things of just at what point is it going to be malpractice to not use AI, right? Like if you look at something like radiology, where they've had AI a lot longer and AI tools, that question is now being addressed is, are you doing your job as a clinician? Are you using the tools and doing the best care you can without some of these tools to assist your judgment? So even if you're a total skeptic, just keep that in mind, that there may come a point when it might be, reflect poorly on you if you don't use AI notes. I don't think we're there yet, but I don't think it's also out of the realm of the possibility in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, perfect. And this one perhaps for Alex or Dave and Steve, if you want to jump in as well. Is there much inaccuracy when the mic mishears words or struggles with accents? Someone saying they've found dictation difficult and requiring lots of correction of notes in the past.
I work with a lot of clients from a lot of different backgrounds, so I've got every imaginable accent coming through my office. What I have found is the contextual information really matters. So sure, in my dictation or in a recap, there might be a word that's off. I have yet to experience anything that's broken my notes or that hasn't made it exactly what I want it to be. So the simple answer is, from experience, I haven't had any problems.
That's great, thank you.
And I'll say a lot of the AI transcription tools that I've used are so much better if you've used any of this stuff in the past. like the nuance or any of the old school kind of dictation software. The new AI models are so much better about even capturing punctuation and exclamation points and quotations. All of that stuff is so much better. But in terms of accents, I think after this event, we can just ask Maxine to say "purple burglar alarm" a lot of times, and that'll work on testing the tool.
Purple burglar. No. Thank you. Yeah, another question, interesting one. Did you see any impact on onboarding new hires, Steve? So has it been helpful for you in onboarding new hires in your clinic?
So like as a tool to actually directly onboard, no, it's not like an onboarding tool. But in terms of getting them set up and bringing them on, super duper simple. One of the things and one of the big ways, because I actually do all the onboarding and training for our clinicians and new hires in this regard, is one, don't be afraid to play around with something like this. You can't break anything. We have our EHR and everyone's like, but what if I email the client or do, well, you don't have that. Push all the buttons and see what they do. Practice, play around. But at the end of the day, it's essentially like 3 buttons to really do the basics of what you want it to do. Everything else is growing and assists, but it's incredibly straightforward. Just take the time to play around and click.
Thank you so much. And Alex, for yourself, what is the monthly cost for Young Sidekick? And can you describe the ongoing tech support for the platform?
Sure. Well, it's easy to think about Yung Sidekick in terms of, well, minutes and the price of the minutes, a price of the minute of processed audio. So we have currently we have subscriptions. If you're a solo practitioner, a standard subscription will cost you, well, 25 pound or 28 USD ballpark. However, with clinics and group practices, we use bulk pricing, volume-based pricing that, well, fits into particularly any budget, practically into any budget that, yeah. So because again, sometimes not everyone needs, not every practice, not every group practice needs all the feature that we have. So we can customize something, rip something off, and, well, just leave the very essential feature that can drive the cost down. But yeah, it's in terms of group pricing, I think it starts somewhere from 30 USD per clinician per month, unlimited.
Perfect.
And for the next month, it's the best price, free. Well, get in right up if you sign up using the webinar code here in the chat that Maxine has provided.
Chat,
it's
yeah,
the best price of all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing this up, Dave. I also see one more question in the chat that I would love to address, actually, too, real quick. So the first one is about the DSM-5 classifications. Is it possible to, does the system support that? And quick answer is, we currently work with ICD-10, but again, we do a lot of custom things for our clients. So like Steve mentioned, we can develop custom reports for, I don't know, for our clinics. And if you love to work with DSM-5, we can make it work for you. And I see another question, like, will it cope with clients with communication difficulties, like severe stammers, speech sound disorders, and language disorders? The honest answer is, well, we don't know for sure, right? So we don't have enough data on that. However, we do the capabilities of the platform and the accuracy of speech transcription and the notes, consequently, they get better every month, because again, the technology is getting better every month. It's getting better at recognizing different speech patterns, different accents, and, well, that transfers to the notes as well. So the best way is to just, well, like Steve mentioned, to go ahead and play around with it and see for yourself, because sometimes when the new model, OpenAI Anthropic model, comes up, it has a lot of new features that, well, we know about them only after they release it. So we just see that our product instantly became better. So yeah, it's better to go ahead and play around with it.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're coming to the end. Let's see if I can share the results of the poll to see everyone's profession, just out of interest, so you'll see. I'm sharing the results now. Hopefully you can see them. Perfect. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining us. And thank you so much our speakers, David and Steve. That was so helpful. And to Alex, everything has been amazing. But yeah, a reminder to register to Write Up or Young Sidekick. If you haven't already done, we've dropped the links in the chat there. Yeah, so you'll receive 1 month free if you sign up using those links. But yeah, again, thank you so much. And if there's ever any other questions anyone has, please get in touch with us at WriteUpp or with Young Sidekick as well. Thank you, everyone.